Welcome to Sex Ed with DB. I'm your host, DB. Let's get into it. Excitement, intimacy, confidence. Uberlube helps you feel all the things you want to feel by reducing friction and boosting pleasure. It's clean, body safe, latex compatible, and free of parabens or preservatives. Basically, it's sex lube done right. Want to try it out for yourself? Use code SEXEDWITHDB at uberlube.com for 10% off your purchase. What if we rethink pleasure as self-care? I recently led a study with 1,000 participants to explore how daily magic wand use impacts things like stress, relationship connectivity, sleep, and emotional well-being. The results? Pleasure is powerful medicine, and vibrators like the magic wand are legitimate tools for wellness. Want to see what we learned? Go to magicwandstudy.com to explore the findings and start your own journey to more mindful pleasure. Lion's Den isn't just a sex toy store. It's a full-on self-love destination. Whether you're shopping for your first vibrator, adding new tools to your pleasure practice, or curious about kink, Lion's Den makes the process approachable and fun. With knowledgeable staff, hundreds of trusted brands, and 50+ years of experience, they have got what you need to feel empowered in your body. Use code SEXEDWITHDB at lionsden.com for 15% off your next purchase.
Let's hang out.
Hi guys, welcome back to Let's Hang Out, a podcast that's worth at least 5 more points on your gay card.
And we validate at the end of the episode. A podcast where 2 lesbians talk about stuff.
A podcast about all things lesbian with your 2 lovely lesbian hosts. A podcast where you get to hang out with 2 lesbians. Welcome to Let's Hang Out, a podcast that's here, it's queer, and it's full of Christmas cheer.
Dude, you're stealing my line.
Oh, I stole your line. Hey guys, welcome to Let's Hang Out, a podcast hosted by 2 lesbian wankers. A podcast that is bursting at the seams with queer. A podcast hosted by 2 living, breathing lesbians.
I'm Ellie.
And I'm Lee.
And we're the co-hosts of Let's Hang Out, a lesbian podcast. Well, you get the idea.
If you're looking for more lesbians in your life, check us out wherever you listen to podcasts.
And let's hang out again soon.
Let's hang out.
Hello, DB here, your favorite sex educator and pleasure expert, and this is DB's Pleasure Preview, where I give you a little taste of what we're diving into today, why it matters, and how it might just change the way that you think about sex. Last episode, we talked to Jamie Joy about trans sex. Jamie's work as a trans sex educator means they've worked with all types of trans people and trans bodies, but Jamie is just one person in the diverse and vast trans community. It's important to hear and hear from our trans femme sisters as well. I sat down to talk with Beatrice, a trans femme friend, about her experiences with gender-affirming care and trans sex. Beatrice, known online as Triss, is a Bay Area-based Mexican-American musician and maker. Check out her band Dirty 20s and Triss's other work online on TikTok and YouTube. As always, this will all be linked in the show notes, including a song from Dirty 20s that shreds. So excited for you to hear that as well. First, we're going to break down some vocabulary. Bottom surgery isn't one specific type of operation. Bottom surgery can mean vaginoplasty, which is the creation or reconstruction of a vaginal canal, phalloplasty, the creation of a phallus using tissue from elsewhere on the body, and even for some people, like our producer Will, a hysterectomy can be considered gender-affirming bottom surgery. Not every trans person gets complete genital reconstructive surgery. In fact, plenty don't get any gender-affirming surgeries at all, either because they unfortunately can't afford it or they don't find it a necessary part of their transition. Every trans person, every trans body, and every trans life is different. In this interview, Beatrice talks about her experience with an orchiectomy, a type of bottom surgery that removes the testes. We'll go into depth on what that means and what Beatrice's procedure was like in our conversation. I am so grateful that Beatrice was willing to share the details of such an intimate procedure with all of us. Just like with the last episode, whether you're cis or trans, non-binary, or figuring things out, I know that you're going to walk away from this chat with something actionable and inspiring. Welcome, Beatrice. Could you please give a quick little introduction of yourself for our listeners?
Hi, my name is Beatrice. I live in the Bay Area. I am a musician and I love playing video games and tinkering with electronics and hanging out with my friends and stuff.
Love that. How did you decide to get bottom surgery? What did that decision-making process look like for you?
I decided to get bottom surgery in 2024. It was a long process of deciding that that's what I wanted. And the specific kind of bottom surgery I got is called an orchiectomy, which is where they remove the testes. A couple reasons that I decided to opt for that was, one, that I wanted to stop taking testosterone blockers. Spironolactone is the most common testosterone blocker that trans women get put on, and it has the really annoying side effect of making you have to pee urgently and often. So it's like, yeah, the less I have to deal with that, the better. And the other thing was I am so sure that I never want to detransition that I'm just sure, under no circumstances would I ever want to go back. So I was like, great, it solves at least those two problems, and it will make further surgery a little bit easier now that my body won't have to heal both the removal of testes and the building of any other structures like a vagina that I might decide to do later.
Awesome. And what was prepping for the surgery like? Did you have any issues getting scheduled, or what did that feel like for you? What was that process like?
Preparation was pretty easy. I was really surprised when I met with a surgeon. He did a little check and he's like, any questions? And I'm like, no. And he's like, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. And we met earlier to mid 2024. And he was like, yeah, we can probably get you on the schedule for October. And I was like, holy shit, really? I assumed it would be a way longer wait list. So I ended up scheduling out for January of 2025. Or was it 2023? Oh, damn. Yeah, wait, no. This is 2023. Yeah, so all this stuff happened in 2023. And then January 2024 is when I had the actual surgery.
And what about the actual surgery itself? What happened? How did it go?
The surgery was really easy. It's really short. It only takes an hour maybe from the time that you go under to them being done. Yeah, so it was, I'm not going to say painless, but it was pretty quick. And yeah, you go in with them and you come out without them. My experience was pretty unique in that I asked my surgeon if I could keep my bits. And he was like, what? But morning of the surgery, he was like, I have some paperwork for you. So I was able to actually get them. I think it was a week later. I had to go back and pick them up from the pathology department. It was really weird. And initially I wanted to preserve them, but I couldn't find anywhere who would do it for me. And I didn't want to deal with formaldehyde in my backyard. So I ended up finding a place to return them to the earth and do a little ritual around that. So yeah, that was an interesting experience.
Wow, we could do an entire episode about returning testes to the earth and the ritual that you did. But alas, I want to hear about your recovery after the surgery. Recovery always depends on how people heal, and so it's different for everybody. But I'm curious for you, what was that recovery process like?
Recovery was also pretty easy. You're not supposed to have sex or like masturbate for like a week. I didn't make it a full week. But because this particular surgery isn't super invasive, masturbation it didn't put any stress on the surgical wound. So I kind of just went for it. And then like a few days later, I had sex and with a partner, and it was fine. You had to kind of be careful because like it was still pretty tender. But yeah, not a huge deal. So yeah, things were pretty gross and swollen for a while. I took pictures, I think every day or like eventually every week or something, just so that I could see. And yeah, like the first day, everything is super swollen and tender. And then it slowly starts, unswelling and healing up. And you get to get back to your day to day. You actually go home the same day of your surgery, and you're encouraged to like take a couple steps to help with blood flow so you don't have any complications. Recovery is pretty chill. It's really important to make sure you have a couple people on like a care team so that you're not doing any heavy lifting. You have people to help you out.
Yeah, super major to have people on your care team. What were some of the biggest changes that you experienced with sex after your recovery?
The biggest changes in terms of sex post orchiectomy are that like birth control isn't really a concern anymore, because obviously with the testes removed, I can't produce any more sperm. Pregnancy isn't really a risk anymore. As long as my partner/partners and I are careful about like other forms of sexual health, like making sure we don't pass STIs around, there isn't really a need for like condoms or barriers, which is nice. I appreciate that. I've only had one partner since my surgery, so I've only had the conversation once. But basically, it is very similar to like pre-surgery. I like to have a conversation about like each other's like wants, needs, boundaries. And so for me, it's sort of just like, I like pressure in that area. You don't have to worry about hurting me because like the very sensitive testes are not there. And it's kind of nice because I'm not sure if you've heard the term muffing, but that is like a sexual practice of like basically like fingering a trans girl by like putting pressure up into her inguinal canals, which is where the testes descend from. And that pressure feels really nice. But for me, pre-surgery, it was kind of painful. So I didn't really do it all that much. But now post-surgery, it's not an issue at all. I think I wish more people would just kind of approach sex with partners with like more curiosity. I've been with some folks who have been like kind of surprised when I'm like, okay, what do you like? What do you dislike? Any boundaries? What should I do? And then I tell them mine. And And I think that can be especially useful with people who've had different like gender confirming surgeries. And yeah.
Yes, talking about boundaries and what feels good for all parties involved is honestly just great advice across the board. So I'm glad you were doing that and talking to people about that, especially after this change. I'm curious about the challenges that you experienced after recovery, and were there any pros, things that just felt really great about getting an orchiectomy and the process afterwards?
Most of my challenges have been like mental and emotional. So one of the pros is not having to worry about pregnancy, but one of the cons is not being able to worry about pregnancy, Like I have always like wanted to start a family, and I am interested in having like biological kids. Um, and, I took care of fertility preservation before, but in the off chance that, there's complications and I'm not able to conceive with the material that I have, then that's it, like I can't go back and make anymore. And that, like permanence is kind of scary to me. But the pros outweigh the cons, like not having to take testosterone blockers anymore. A plus, highly recommend. Access to new like sex acts, also great. Like it can be kind of gender affirming to like be fingered, and even if there's not like a canal there yet, it is still pleasant. Another pro to having an orchie is that if I do decide to go through and get like a vaginoplasty, then I don't have to get both surgeries at once, essentially. So like my body doesn't have to heal from having testes removed and a vaginal canal built. So anecdotally, I think that helps. I don't know if there's really been any studies into it, but I've heard that it helps the healing process from vaginoplasty. And in particular, I'm interested in getting this really cool sort of like gender non-conforming, non-binary bottom surgery. It's called phallus preserving vaginoplasty, which is kind of exactly what it sounds like, right? They let you keep your phallus, your penis, and you're also able to have a vagina. And that's like best of both worlds in my book. Like I thankfully don't have that much dysphoria around like the equipment that I have. So getting to keep that is great. And then, like bottoming seems like it's so much easier if you have a vagina. Like you don't have to worry about like mess and food and fiber and cleaning out and all that stuff, all the stuff that comes along with bottoming with like anal sex. So I'm in the process of like seeing if I'm eligible for that form of bottom surgery, the phallus preserving vaginoplasty. So if I do end up doing that and you want to follow up, I'd be more than happy to.
That would be amazing. Thank you so much, Beatrice. I am absolutely in awe of your openness, and thank you so much for talking with me and sharing your story. You're amazing. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. I am always happy to talk about myself, and I love talking about sex and nerding out about stuff. So this was great fun. Thank you so much.
And welcome to the Afterglow. I love Beatrice's story of getting an orchiectomy and just how open she was about what the process has been like for her. As always, remember that this isn't the process that everyone experiences. Trans people, like any other group of people, are not a monolith. But I'm really glad that Beatrice had such a good process and recovery, and it felt good for her. So yay, Beatrice. One of the sex acts that Beatrice mentioned is muffing, so I just wanted to call that out. A method of fingering trans women that many of you might just never have heard about. A great resource on muffing and so much great information on having sex with trans femmes can be found in the seminal zine, Fucking Trans Women by Mira Bellwether. We'll link that in the show notes as well. Mira passed away in 2022, but she passed the ownership to her sister in hopes that her work could continue supporting her family. The zine is just $10, and it's an absolute cornerstone of trans sex ed. And you can find the official release only at fuckingtranswomen.org, again in the show notes, so check that out. Give it a read, whether or not you're actively fucking trans women. You might be surprised at how much it can actually teach you about yourself, no matter who you are. And here is the pleasure practice of the week. Think about what kind of ritual that you'd give a part of your body. It doesn't have to be something you'd have removed or something that you'd want to return to the earth. It could just be throwing it a party, or crafting an altar for it, or just having like a nice weekly check-in. I know for me, something that I really like to think about when it comes to my own body is how my skin feels, and making sure that I'm attending to that, and making sure that I want to just like pay attention to how smooth my skin is, and like celebrate that, and make sure that I'm like moisturizing and feeling good, and really like letting my skin have its moment, have its day in the sun, so to speak, with sunblock. But I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I know that I did. Super, super important. If you liked it or learned something new, email me at sexedwithdb@gmail.com. Would love to hear from you. And thank you all so much for listening. Love y'all. Talk to you next week.